What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, May 29th, 2024, episode 126? Dave, I didn't even realize that last week we were at $1.25. Like we've
yeah.
I
didn't realize that either. Also, you need to fix that whole me starting on the wrong side.
I don't know what that is. It's weird. I don't like it. I don't like you being over there. It's like you don't belong there.
Yeah. I don't like being over there.
You don't. No, we got to figure that out. But hello, everybody. Thank you for watching. Everyone over on X and YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, definitely hit the subscribe button and like. X, follow. We would, love to have you guys all spread the word. Let everybody know we're here. And, we're a fun show. I wear my cool shirts. Hail Lobster. What's up, Jordan Peterson? But we're on our quest, Dave. And right now we're failing on X. We lost 4, Dave. We suck.
Happens.
3,598 followers on the quest to 4K. What with YouTube, we gained 1 sub, 67 on the quest to 100. So let's roll. Let's keep that going. Let's help us out there again. Word of mouth is the biggest way to get us there. And if you want to find us on any of the other socials, just go search Alex Cuesta Show. You'll see the little arrows. We're there. We are everywhere. Mm-hmm. Quickly, let's talk about last week's show. We had on my good buddy from back in the day, Steve Mendez, and we heard his story. Dave, I thought it was a really cool episode. Hearing about him going into the military, being a pilot, having depression, and pro rugby player, and now a pastor, like a youth pastor. It's like such a roller coaster. If you want to hear just a really cool story with tops and turns, uplifting, down, all that, definitely go back, give last week's show a listen. It was lots of fun. But Dave, I didn't even actually say hi to you today because you're just like kind of a gnat. You're just there.
Yeah, it's fair.
And you
I don't
just
blame you.
Keep coming back.
I don't blame you at all.
How are you? What
I'm
is
pretty
your life
good,
like?
actually.
What are you doing with yourself?
Nothing. I've been diving into Hades 2 a little bit, but it also made me realize I didn't play enough of the first Hades, so I've been playing the both of them side by side.
You're basically like the way you watch anime or read manga. Just do them all at the same time and just hope for the best, right? That's basically how it is. Now, Dave, my hair looks terrible, but I am on a quest to grow it out because the girls asked me to grow my hair out to my shoulders. So every single week, everyone can be here and just watch my quest to just look worse than I normally do. Yeah. So this is going to be interesting. But I'm done with talking to you. I want to talk to some interesting people. And I'm excited here because usually when we talk about nerdy stuff and we talk about, other things we like besides politics, usually just me and you or like one of our friends jumping on. But I'm pumped to have on someone who actually knows what he's talking about for once. And was in there, has a great show. He is Matt Kadish. He is, he's all the way up there. What are you doing, Matt? Now look at this. We're going to switch it around. What are you doing, Restream? Anyway, he's Matt Kadish. He is the producer of the Salty Nerd Podcast and owner of the Las Vegas Podcaster Studio. What's up, Matt? How's it going?
Thanks for having me on, guys. I don't know if I actually know what I'm talking about, but I can fake it pretty well.
You know more than us.
Certainly know more than us. I think you definitely do. So I want to jump right in first. So you have the Salty Nerd Podcast. You're the producer there. What the hell is the Salty Nerd Podcast? Where can people find it?
You can go to saltynerdvideo.com, check out our YouTube page. It'll take you right there. We're also on Apple Podcasts. They keep changing the name. So Apple Podcasts and Spotify, if you guys want to check out the audio only thing. And we just launched Salty Nerd Gaming. You can see my two cohorts are in the studio just playing Helldivers 2 right now.
Great.
Instead of live streaming, they leave that up to me. But we've been having a lot of fun with the gaming channel, but the Salty Nerd Podcast is basically, it's a comedy podcast, and we just make fun of movies and TV shows on it. And so we get together every Tuesday and every Saturday and just have a good old time talking about movies and TV shows and pooping on everything we can think of that has pop culture elements to it.
Yeah. So one of the things I found pretty dope is on Salty Nerd, if you go on Spotify, you guys have the Joe Rogan thing going on where there's actually video. If you go on Spotify and have you guys on, how the hell did you guys get that to happen? That's one of the cool. I thought Rogan only got that treatment. That's pretty dope. Is that an extra feature you guys got to do? What is that? I want to eventually get our mugs on there.
Well, if you distribute your podcast through Spotify, they just give it to you. So anyone who has a Spotify account can do video podcasts. And basically, we upload the same videos that we have on YouTube. Yeah. And if people want to watch us on Spotify, they can, or they can just listen to us on Spotify. So
I got to say, it's the most
flexible.
unsafe thing ever when I have like my hands free and I'm watching you guys, not really like trying to listen and like I'm driving and then all of a sudden you guys are there and I'm like, well, cop pulls me over, I'm screwed. I'm trying to listen to it. But like, and that's the thing, like with you and Rogan, it's like, I swear, officer, I'm not trying to watch it, I'm trying to listen to it. But I think that's really cool. So yeah, if you want to see them, you know, you don't only have to go to YouTube, you can also go to your Spotify. You can also watch them. So I'm actually curious. I want to jump right into a current movie that just came out, Furiosa. Mad Max movie, basically like in the Mad Max sphere. Now, you're one of the people
Mad
that
Max
I've seen.
Saga.
Yeah, something like that. You're one of the people that I've seen that actually like the movie. And I saw on X, you went on, you know, a pretty good, you know, string of like, hey, like, don't, like, there's no reason to hate this movie. Don't knock this movie. It's a good movie. Now, I've seen from a lot of the, like, I guess you want to call them like red-pilled kind of nerdy streamers. Like, a lot of them have hated it. What makes you like it? And do you think some people just kind of buy into the shtick of they have to hate certain things and they do it?
No, I don't think people hate stuff for the sake of hating it. Most people have very good, you know, justification for disliking something.
Yeah.
When it comes to Furiosa, though, like a lot of people look at Furiosa as kind of supplanting Mad Max, you know, like basically like, you know, there's the Mad Max movies. And then when Fury Road came out, they're like, oh, Mad Max became like a side character, like a Mad Max movie for the sake of this girl boss, Furiosa. But like, you know, the difference here is that basically it's the original creator of Mad Max. He made 3 full-length Mad Max movies. He wanted to do something different. He wanted to expand the lore in the world and introduce new characters and kind of like free the Mad Max universe from the character of Max. He wanted it to be like a bigger, more expansive like storyline.
Yeah.
And if you watch Furiosa, it's basically the first part of Fury Road. Like they really are designed to be 2 halves of the same movie. And I can't wait for it to come out on streaming because like I'll watch Furiosa and then go right into Fury Road and get like the full story George Miller had originally envisioned. And in fact, he actually has a trilogy planned. I don't think that's going to come to fruition because, you know, Furiosa isn't doing all that well. But the third part of his trilogy was going to be like, what was Max doing up to the point where, you know, Fury Road begins. So it's kind of like a parallel prequel to Furiosa up to the point where Fury Road starts. And so you'd be able to watch, you know, the Furiosa movie, the Mad Max movie, and then like Fury Road where they both combine. Yeah. And I think that's pretty cool. Like to me, George Miller is one of those great auteurs who stands alone in terms of like, you know, like he's up there with Spielberg and stuff like that in my
fantastic
book. Because he's just a visionary, you know, like he has a very clear vision of what he wants to do, like from a stylistic perspective. Like he puts Zack Snyder to shame. Like you can always
100%.
I mean, you know, Snyder's kind of dirtied his own name. So it hasn't helped.
Yeah, but like, you know, he puts pretty pictures on screen.
Yeah.
And every time you're watching a Zack Snyder film, you know it's a Zack Snyder film. Same thing with George Miller. Every time you see a George Miller movie, you know it's George Miller. And Furiosa had some of the most amazing set pieces I've seen in a long time in a movie. And it was a fun film, and it was like so well done. And like, I personally don't understand all the dislike for it. Most of the dislike I've seen has come from people who haven't seen it yet, and they're not seeing it on principle. The people who see it usually like it. And there are a few holdouts who are just like, it's not for me, and which is fine. But I just personally like, you know, like it's great seeing George Miller's vision come to life on the big screen. And it does feel like, you know, now Fury Road is a whole movie with Furiosa being out there. So,
you know, after you got there.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot of people on Twitter also, however you want to say it, X, Twitter, I don't care. I'm going to say Twitter. But there's a lot of people on there that are complaining about Furiosa not getting the numbers that they think it should get because right now it's not doing well. And I don't know what you think has bought into that and made that happen, but I don't know if it's a general apathy towards even going to the movies, because I know Barbie and Oppenheimer did well. I know Dune 2 did pretty well, but I think those all had some kind of meme magic to it for some reason. Barbenheimer happened. Dune 2, I mean, people liked the first one, but also there's a whole bunch of memes of people saying Lisan Al Gaib for Dune 2. You saw that everywhere. And I don't know, it seems like unless there's like some kind of cultural significance that you'll see everywhere on Instagram, it doesn't seem like people have the motivation to go see many movies in general anymore.
Well, there are a couple issues when it comes to Furiosa in particular. The first of all, it's a prequel to a movie that came out 10 years ago, right?
Yep. That doesn't help.
And originally, like George Miller was on track to get this movie out like 2 years after Fury Road came out. But then he had a dispute with Warner Brothers over the royalties, the payouts for Fury Road. And that went on for about like 5 years, I think. And then once they got that resolved, then he started work on Furiosa. And so like, this is a movie that basically like maybe like it's a very niche audience to begin with, fans of Mad Max. But then like, the fact that it's coming out so long after the hype of Fury Road and stuff like that. So it was catering to a very like small kind of niche audience to begin with. But to the larger issue about theaters, so like ever since the pandemic hit and quarantine and all this stuff, people have shifted the way that they consume content. Like, like it used to be, if you wanted to see a movie, you'd go to the theater, and then you'd have to wait up to 6 months for it to come out on home video if you missed it in the theater. And but if you wanted to see it ahead of time, like you'd buy the DVD or something like that. And streaming was kind of like like a down the road afterthought. By the time that like the studio would license it out to Netflix, because you only had Netflix or Amazon to choose from, basically. And when the pandemic hit, the studios radically shifted their business model. And basically now, like they struck deals with the theaters so that if a movie doesn't make like $50 million in its opening weekend, within the span of like 17 days, I think it is, like they're allowed to release it on streaming to try to recoup some of that cost.
That's crazy.
So the window from theater to streaming has shortened dramatically. And because of how bad the US economy is right now with like inflation and
what do you mean? Bidenomics is working. What it is great. You just are too dumb to see that it's working.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't believe my lying eyes. But with the fact that like they keep saying that they've reduced inflation, it's like, no, they've reduced the growth of inflation, but like the 20 or 30% that happened before they like slowed it down somewhat hasn't gone away.
That's the trick. It's like it's the year to year. It didn't grow 3% this year. It only grew 1%, but it didn't go back 1%. You're just getting 1 on top of the 3 that we already had. So
it's still growing.
Yes.
And
it's obvious it is.
And so like everything's more expensive. Gas is more expensive. Groceries are more expensive. Cost of living has gone up. And so most families are trying to find ways to cut corners. And one of the first things that get cut are, luxury items like going to the movies. Because if you look at it, like, let's say you have a family of 4, right? Mother, father, 2 kids. Going to the movies, you have to, in a lot of places, pay for parking. So like that's like $20 to $50 right there. Then you have ticket prices, which have gone up. Then you have concession prices, which have gone way up. Right.
And that's always where they made their money, and we knew that, but we just wanted the popcorn and the soda, and we were okay with paying a fair chunk of change because we were going to go get a great experience on the big screen, and that, like, it was worth it. Now it doesn't even seem like it's that worth it, especially with everyone having 70, 50, 60, 80-inch TVs in their houses.
Yeah, so like a trip to the movie theater could easily cost a family of 4 upwards of $300.
That's ridiculous.
And so like if you look at it like this, it's like, why not just wait for 2 weeks and watch it at home for essentially free? I mean, you're paying for like Netflix or like Amazon or whatever, but it's kind of like a cost that you've already like shouldered. And so like a family of 4 can sit in front of their 100-inch TV and enjoy a movie instead of like having to go to the theater and spend all that money and stuff like that. And so theaters are in a weird position where basically like the culture has changed and how people want to consume stuff. They're competing against, like increased prices, but also the studio system seems to refuse to revert back to the old business model, which actually was profitable for both them and the theaters. And instead they just keep doubling down on their streaming stuff. And it's proven that out of all the streaming services, only Netflix and Amazon are actually profitable, right? And Amazon, it's a little bit, kind of like wonky.
Yeah.
But for the studios like Disney, Paramount, like Warner Brothers, all these guys who launched their own streaming services, it's a money loser for them.
Yeah, they're hemorrhaging money.
Yeah, and it's actually like way more profitable if they would just license their stuff out to Netflix and close like down their streaming apps, right?
Yep.
But they refuse to do that, and they also refuse to let stuff live in the theaters for longer than 2 weeks. But also, in addition to all that stuff, I just think that people are still of the mindset that they don't want to leave the house.
Yeah, and I think they successfully scared the shit out of a ton of people when it came to COVID. And I know me and my wife, we used to go see movies like once a week when we were like dating and things like that.
Yeah,
Like
real quick. I want to push back on the concessions were worth it type of fucking thing. What are you talking about?
They were
bringing in candy was the normal thing to do in movie
Yes, but you bought popcorn. But you bought popcorn, you got a soda. You were fucking weird if you didn't get popcorn and soda. Okay, you brought in the candy. That's fine. But there's nothing like the gross movie theater butter and getting your hand disgusting as you're shoving it in. Like, that is part of the movie going experience, Dave. Maybe you're just weird. Matt, do you buy popcorn when you go to movies?
I can't go to a movie without getting popcorn.
Exactly. Matt, you're
physically impossible. Yeah.
You're a human. David is just an alien. So yes,
know,
it was worth paying. You would get the stupid combo that came with the candy, and it was $20.99. Like, that was always what it was. And you're like, this cost $6 in real life, but I'm okay because I'm going to see the movie anyway. So yeah, you can push back all you want. But overall, yeah, they did a successful job scaring the hell out of people to stay indoors. And like I said, my wife and I, we used to go out almost every weekend. And even when we had our first daughter, we still wanted her to go see a bunch of movies and things like that. Since COVID, though, the price and everything, like, we were considering going to see Garfield this weekend, and we're like, it'll be out soon. Like, and that's honestly, I think, the attitude. And I was someone that used to truly enjoy going to the movies, and especially in the heyday of Marvel, you wanted to go see the Marvel movies and all these like big things, especially like, Transformers, even though it's just explosions and robots saying the same thing over and over again. It was still fun to see in the theaters. So it's sad to see. And in terms of Mad Max, with me, I wasn't a huge fan of Fury Road. And, as much as I love Tom Hardy, I'll give Tom Hardy like a chance with anything because he's in one of my favorite movies of all time. But like, I wasn't a big fan. So Furiosa didn't interest me. And that's kind of where I'm at. Will I watch it when it comes out on streaming? Yes, I will watch it on streaming. So I'm part of the problem here. So when it comes to the industry more, Matt, what have you seen? We've kind of covered some of the things with like the deals and the things that they've been doing and kind of their refusal to basically adapt, right, with the theaters and how it's going. Do you see anything promising coming up soon in the future that can maybe give like the theaters a bump up? Because they were bailed out too. I think people forget that my money went to bail out a bunch of these theaters. Do you see anything that's kind of going to potentially save them, or are they pretty much screwed with what's going on with streaming in the studios?
Well, oddly enough, the most profitable thing for theaters within the past year was Taylor Swift's Eras Tour thing.
I forgot about
That's
that.
true.
And so like live events in theaters might be like a new thing that they start adopting. Like, you might be able to go see like a UFC fight in a theater as opposed to like a bar or something.
And that's like the Fathom events, right? Is that like the company that does all those? Because I remember always seeing like the Fathom event commercials, and like while I'm going to see a movie, I'm like, the hell, I'm going to come back here for one of these things. Like, I don't want to watch a concert here. I want to go to the concert. But obviously that was huge.
I know Alamo Drafthouse already started doing main cards of UFC, big pay-per-views. They did the main cards because I went and saw them a couple times. It's a fun time.
Yeah, and also they're doing these flashback cinemas. I believe that's Fathom as well, where basically they take older movies, put them back in theater, and it's like, hey, for like $2 or $5 or whatever, you can come see like Indiana Jones like on the big screen.
Yep.
And that's been very successful for them, is kind of going back and like, taking movies people love and re-releasing them. But when it comes to the actual like modern movies, like the stuff that's coming out. The theaters are going to have to basically do what they did when TV was disrupting the business, right? Which is basically introduce something that you can't get at home.
Yeah.
Right now, the big thing is IMAX.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, is the IMAX screen, but eventually they're going to be, I think, moving towards this thing called Screen X, which is a 360-degree experience. So like
that's pretty
I
sick.
think I heard of that.
Yeah, so like I actually got to see the movie Rampage with The Rock in Screen X, and it was amazing because like it's almost like an immersive experience where you have screens on the sides of you in addition to being on the front.
Tell Dutch Butters I said bye.
They say goodbye, Dutch Butters.
Sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
It's okay. So like theaters are going to have to start competing in terms of a different experience than you can get at home, and that's really the only way that they're going to be able to kind of like bring people back, I think, and justify higher ticket prices. But as it is right now, unless the studios get their act together and kind of like collectively come together and say like, hey, we need to lengthen the time from theater to like home video, and we need to kind of like roll things back a bit to pre-pandemic business models and stuff like that. I doubt that there's going to be a whole lot that theaters can do to kind of stem this tide, because like as long as we have Democrats running the country and these people are complete economic illiterates, we're just going to continue to raise prices and
it's
make things
intentional.
so expensive.
I was just saying, I'd venture to say they're not
it's
actually illiterate.
They're not illiterate. That they're doing this intentionally. Don't give them enough credit that they're dumb. They're actually doing this for a reason.
No, they're pretty dumb. But like the whole thing here is that as long as we have people running the country that don't understand basic economics, things are going to continue to price out like the lower to middle class people from actually enjoying leisure activities. And when you have to pay $100 to gas up your car, it's like how much money do you have left over to go to a movie theater, right?
How much is gas by you? You're in Vegas. How much is gas over there right now?
Gas right now is around between $4 and $5.
Oh, holy shit! I'm in New York over here. I'm pissed when I see like the 360 something.
Yeah, I was say I'm up at 3 something.
I mean, in California, it's between $7 and $8.
Yeah,
I don't understand how can they live in California? Like, how can they It's tough here in New York to afford things. I can't imagine how they're living in California, and then trying to go see a movie. Right? How are you even going to think about going to see a movie in California?
California is ridiculous because they basically legalize crime in California. I don't know if you guys know about that. Yeah. But basically, like you're allowed to shoplift anything as long as like under 1,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
So like if you go into like, let's say like a Walgreens or a CVS pharmacy or even a Target, it's like walking into a prison because everything is like locked up. It's behind like these like sealed off cabinets. You have to call like someone to come like open them up for you. So you
and how annoying was that when you had to buy razors, right? Remember back in the day buying razors, those were always behind those glass things. And you'd have to call an attendant to get a freaking razor for your face. And now they have to do it with like candy. Like it's insane.
Well, no, it's crazy because like we have people who come into Las Vegas from LA over the weekend, just to like get away or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're always amazed when they go into a grocery store and they're like, man, like stuff is still on the shelves. Like you can actually like reach up and grab it.
That's so dystopian.
How do you live like that? How do you live like that?
No, like everyone I talk to that I know who still lives in California, they're like, I want to get out of here. But there's like, their jobs are keeping them there or whatever. But like it's one of the most expensive states to live with like state taxes and stuff like that. They're very, very anti-business friendly. Like they just celebrated the whole like $20 minimum wage, and then like
they had to push back 25. They're like they're the actual. So they wanted to go to $25 minimum wage, but they're pushing it back because they realize that right now it's like they're not like. I think their excuse was like, oh, we're not ready to do that competently. It's like nothing you guys do is competent.
But I mean, like, they were specifically for like the fast food industry where it's like, like we want people to be making $20 an hour. And once that law passed, they replaced them all with kiosks.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it just goes back to that economic illiteracy. And plus you have like all the pension liabilities, where basically
Mhm.
California is just like paying people 75% of what they were being paid to work, but it's coming out of like, taxes and pensions and stuff like that. But in addition to that, you also have like, the illegal immigrant issue where they're giving them free healthcare, free college education, like all this free stuff that gets passed on to the taxpayers. One of the reasons gas is so high in California is because of all the taxes that they tack on to that gas stuff. And then they're like trying to force people onto electric vehicles. And people don't seem to understand that electricity is way more expensive than gasoline. So like,
especially when you're shutting down coal plants and you're not going
Yeah.
nuclear and you're relying on wind turbines and solar panels that stop working after like 90 degrees. Hit it, and you're in California, and that's a frequent thing where it's over 90.
Yeah, like just to give you an idea of how terribly run California is, like when I was living there, they got a $1.6 billion grant from the Obama administration to build a high-speed rail between California and Las Vegas.
Yeah, I remember this.
And they started building it. They got halfway done, and they ran out of money. And so like they just said fuck it, right?
Matt, what about like the 700 million that the Biden administration passed to put electric charging stations around the country? And I think they finished 7. I think they might have 7 stations. This has been 4 years. They put $700 million, I think it was, to this. 7 stations. Didn't that dumbass promise 500?
Well, do you remember the Solyndra stuff? Where basically,
yeah. Do you remember he's going to cure cancer? Like, that's still a thing. He's promised to cure cancer multiple times. Like, I can understand if you're a leftist and you just really don't like the right and you're like, fuck these people, I'm going to vote for anyone, right? This is quite literally voting for the piece of wood. Like, Biden is dumber than a piece of wood. And I don't take the whole entire that he's completely, like, gone. I just think he's kind of a moron. He's always been kind of a racist moron. I just think this is him. Now, really quickly, we had a nice chat come through. We always appreciate our chats.
Yeah, I want to bring that up. That's big.
Third rail with Omar. I used to bring a duffel bag full of food to Yankees games for me and my 3 kids. That's awesome.
I don't know how you got past. I don't know how you did it, but that's awesome.
Third rail. What year was this? Because after 9/11, you could barely get yourself through the shit at Yankees games. So I want to know what year you were doing this third rail. So, but yeah, no, California is absolutely nuts, and it's a travesty. But I don't even know where we were going with that. The studios, right? And watching movies. That's where I think we were. So, I want to ask you this: how far away do you think we are in theaters? I feel like if they offered this could help save them, because you have the 360 screens, right? That's awesome. What if they all had
smell-o-vision?
VR? Smell-o-vision would be dope. But like VR at like the seats, and then you can like be in the movies. Like, would that be something that they've been toying with, or is that just way too in the future?
They have the real D seats.
That's way too in the future. Like, if you look at the most advanced VR headset, which is that Apple monstrosity, it's so big, it's so expensive, it's so clunky. Like if my glasses, if these were what VR headsets were, then it'd be one thing, right? Yeah. But I mean, like, they can't even do 3D yet. How are they going to do VR? You know?
Yeah.
And plus, like, it would, like, true like VR experience would require Hollywood to shoot movies to cater to VR. So if anything, I actually think that the proliferation of like AI tools is going to be the big disruptor, because essentially at a certain point in time, you're going to be able to have some dude in his basement sit down with a personal computer, a PC, and use AI to create a movie that's on the level of $200 million AAA films from Hollywood. And he's not going to have to need actors. He's not going to have to need unions, craft services, equipment, none of that stuff. Like, he could make it all just by himself at his computer. And we're like 2 to 3 years away from that, right? And so, like, when you decentralize the ability to make movies without needing like a $200 million budget, and you can distribute it on YouTube or sell it through Patreon or like whatever the case may be, you basically are able to compete with like real Hollywood studios. And all these actors and writers and people who did these like strikes at the worst possible time they could have done them.
Absolute morons. They all sniff their own farts. It's terrible.
It's just like, I'm old enough to remember when, Metallica fought against Napster and the music industry was trying to like stop the adoption of MP3s. But like, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember like Discmans and Walkmans.
Yeah. I had David was a little bit
I'm not old enough, but I know about it.
I had the, and the biggest thing that for friggin' man was when the Walkman became shockproof and you didn't have to like balance it on your hands to not skip a friggin' sound. That was incredible.
Like I can remember walking to class when I was in college, and you were stuck with like whatever songs were on the CD that you had in your Discman, and then like when the MP3 stuff started hitting, it's like, wow, I could have like a program on my computer that could have like all this like thousands of hours of music that would just like auto rotate or like whatever. And it was like free essentially, right? And then like Apple found a way to monetize it eventually. But it's the same thing with movies now and AI, because like AI is the tidal wave that you can't stand against. It's just a force of nature. It's going to happen. And Hollywood's trying to fight against it because they're so stuck in their ways. But eventually it's going to be a situation where people can make movies and sell them directly to consumers. It's kind of like what's going on in the comic book industry now.
Definitely the indie comics,
yeah. But like when anyone can create their own TV series on the level of something like Rings of Power, for instance.
That can already be done with me in this room right here without that $1 billion budget, because Rings of Power is god awful. And maybe if AI helped out Disney and Marvel, they could actually do proper CGI.
But when you decentralize the ability to make movies and give everyone the tools to create something that is on the level of what we've come to expect in terms of like big budget cinema, you create an environment where there's so much competition that the studios aren't going to be able to keep up with it.
Yeah.
And so like, it's a win for the consumers ultimately.
Yeah.
But people who have made millions, in Hollywood and stuff like that, their days are numbered essentially.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because that's also like a very Western thing, because right now while Hollywood is just hurting itself continuously by high budgets and going on strikes that they didn't need to go on, we've been seeing the rise of like Eastern media, really, like South Korea, India has been putting out stuff that people are just watching more and more stuff from Eastern Hemisphere now, because they don't really care too much about a lot of the stuff that Hollywood and things that are happening in California and everywhere else in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, the biggest issue there is that Hollywood doesn't care or doesn't acknowledge who their actual audience is.
That's true.
And so when you have like stuff coming out of South Korea and India and other markets, where they actually still care about storytelling as opposed to pushing propaganda in their so-called entertainment, because people turn to entertainment to get away from bullshit political stuff, right? And these countries that you guys mentioned, India and South Korea, they don't put any of that crap in their entertainment, and so like it makes their stuff way more enjoyable than the American stuff.
Is, if they do and when they do, it's not the main focus, right? Like me and Dave we're big like anime manga fans and stuff like that. And one of the ones that Dave turned me on to, that's one of my favorites, is Alice in Borderlands. Alice in Borderlands, one of the main characters has a trans male to female who's like a martial artist, extremely important to the plot. I won't give away any spoilers, but you find out their backstory. You know that they're trans. They make jokes every once in a while, hitting on like the dudes. Like they bring it into the story in a way that makes it organic, but it's not the focus. Like you don't give a shit that the individual's trans post the fact finding out about it. And that's the way it used to be. There used to be a gay character. Okay, now we find out they're gay. That's not all they are. Their character has more depth. And I think the issue, like you said, there's the messaging, there's the agenda, and there's just no depth besides that. It's just, here's the message, here's the agenda, let's keep on repeating it, let's keep on slamming it into your face. Like Doctor Who is a perfect example. The Doctor Who special and the new Doctor. And I'm not a huge Doctor Who fan. My dad is a massive Doctor Who fan. But it's just like, they make these things unwatchable because, like you said, if they cared about their audience, you can blend these things. You can do these things. Hollywood has always thrown in some leftist stuff. We've seen it. There's always been hints and pieces at it, but you just kind of overlook it because the rest of the product's awesome. Like, you're okay with that.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show, like, go ahead, Matt.
Well, I don't know if you notice a lot of this living in New York, but when I lived in Hollywood, there's a definite bubble there where, like, in the city, in the industry, you're surrounded by so many people who think and believe in the same stuff that it's almost incomprehensible to think that there are people out there who don't view things the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very frustrating. In fact, I used to belong to a organization out there called the Friends of Abe.
Oh, you were part of the Friends of Abe? That's all like the secret Hollywood conservatives, right?
It wasn't very secret. I mean, like, it was basically there were some high profile Hollywood actors who ran it. And it was almost like group therapy sessions for people who weren't far leftists.
Yeah.
Because you'd go to these meetings and there'd be people there where they would talk about how, because they didn't vote for Obama, their kids would be made fun of at school. And they'd lose out on jobs, or they'd be blacklisted from work, and so they're afraid to, like, actually express their views, while the lunatic leftist right next to them is, like, going on rants about conservatives being Nazis. And
Vince Vaughn comes to mind with that. Vince Vaughn, since he kind of made some, like, comments, like, I don't know how many years ago, I haven't seen him in many things, and he was, like, the funny guy for a solid 5 years, like 5, 6, 7 more than that. And then all of a sudden he kind of came out as conservative, and boom, Vince Vaughn's apparently not funny anymore. Like, you see that type of stuff go on, and it's blatantly obvious when they do that to people. And it absolutely sucks when it happens.
Well, I mean, like, leftists are some of the most intolerant, racist, sexist people you'll ever meet.
Vile.
And Hollywood's very much like that. Like the bad behavior that goes on there behind the scenes is something to behold, really. When I lived in Hollywood, everyone knew about Harvey Weinstein.
Absolutely. And I think everybody should be held to task. All the major celebrities that knew about it, I don't think you could jail them, but they should absolutely be freaking drilled, and they're not. They go back to their award shows, and everyone forgets that they knew that girls were getting raped consistently.
But I mean, like, I moved out to Hollywood in, like, 2001, and it was just an open secret. It was like everyone freaking knew what Harvey Weinstein did to people, and they know who he did it to, right? And a lot of the women that he did that to went along with it because he'd help out their careers. So like, even like the victimhood is a little bit questionable, because these women willingly went along with it in order to get to gain stuff from doing so. I'm not saying all the women did that, but there were like a good portion of them. But it's like Harvey Weinstein was just like one of many. It
still goes on 100%. It absolutely has to still go on.
Oh yeah, and a lot of it has to do with, like, young men. You have these homosexual like bigwig studio people.
We're seeing the rap stuff coming out a lot now. Yeah.
I mean, Michael Ovitz kind of got blacklisted when he came out and talked about the gay mafia that secretly runs Hollywood. And having worked there for, like, a long time, I can tell you that that's a real thing.
It's insane.
And they take advantage of young men, just like Harvey Weinstein took advantage of, like, young women. And it's absolutely disgusting and crazy what goes on there. And yet they're the first ones to lecture other people about how they live their lives, and it's all just one big hypocritical pile of doo-doo.
It's always James Lindsay's someone that I follow. I've listened to discourses and stuff, but he has the iron law of woke projection, and that's exactly what it is they will always project out, and the leftists have done this forever, but they will always project out exactly what they were doing. It's a Saul Alinsky rules for radicals. You always yell the loudest about what you're doing to the other side. because it deflects away from you. And that's like, it's bizarre that there is an actual playbook out there written by a leftist that is followed. And if anybody wants to see the playbook currently for what like the radical left does in terms of protesting, just go on beautifultrouble.org. Go there. It is a spot where it is quite literally step by step how to organize, who to contact to organize, what to do at an organization, like when you're protesting, how to cause problems, how to get reactions. This is a playbook that's out there. It's not something like things that Matt's saying, things that me and Dave say. We're not talking conspiracy theories here. These are out in the open things. Like Matt said, you go to Hollywood, it's maybe shocking to us over here on the East Coast. We hear hints and rumors. But when you go to Hollywood, like you said, it's an open secret. And you have certain shows that like kind of do hints at these things, right? Like I think Entourage had some hints at some of the shit that went on without kind of blowing it up. Otherwise, they would have never continued to have a show. But it's wild out there to just sit there. And it's like, this is all part and parcel with the powerful. We still don't have the Epstein client list. They keep on trickling out some of the flight list, right? Because it has some powerful people on the right on that flight list. So now you can start to, question. And if they're on the client list, fuck those people. They can all go to hell. But you don't have the client list. Harvey Weinstein, no one talks about it anymore unless they just talked about that. The conviction and thing. The gay mafia thing is starting to come out more and more. People are getting brave. Cat Williams flat out was like, I ain't no homo. No one ever they tried. I'm not touching anything. It's like.
Well, the thing is this is nothing new, though. Look at Roman Polanski. I had to look him up because I want to make sure I got the name right. But look at what happened to Roman Polanski. Everyone loved him. I think people signed a petition after he was convicted to like have him be able to come back or to the United States or something like that. Like this is
and the child actor that was blackballed. Yeah. I forget his name. He was one and he said that he was touched and he got blackballed. Feldman? Yeah, Corey Feldman.
Yeah, this is nothing new. And like you said, but there's also a playbook for a lot of these things. There's a playbook for keeping an open secret, one. But there's also a playbook in how they approach things, especially now when it comes to making TV shows. We've seen it a lot, actually, where it almost seems like if they know they don't have a good TV show going into it, they'll immediately attack people, immediately set it up to attack people, and get them talking about the show, so at least bruise up something. So maybe some people will watch the show, which I find really interesting.
Well, one of the worst aspects of Hollywood is that back in the 50s, right? Mm-hmm. Like there was an actual studio system that would take people and basically make them go through a process in which they could work their way up, right? Like you start off in the mailroom and then eventually you're a super producer, right? But by starting off in the mailroom, you get exposed to working on sets and you get exposed to studio meetings and you work your way up to assistant and then you work your way up to a gopher or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And you learn the industry. Nowadays, that doesn't happen. You have people who have never bothered to study narratives, writing, directing, working with actors, acting, producing, nobody knows anything, right? Like the two guys that created the Rings of Power show, they were part of the Bad Robot incubator.
Yeah.
They were like the apprentices of Roberto Orci, who used to be Alex Kurtzman's writing partner. Mm-hmm. And
we know Kurtzman sucked with Star Trek.
Yeah, him and Orci were two of the biggest, luckiest hacks in Hollywood because they just happened to be friends with J.J. Abrams, who kind of brought them along on these big projects, and they were able to get their foot in the door a lot of stuff. But Orci's kind of fallen off the map after he kind of divorced Kurtzman. Mm-hmm. But the guys who basically did Rings of Power, they didn't have any experience directing, producing. They had written a couple scripts, but their background was not in writing. They were just two dudes. Mm-hmm. And they had to get J.J. Abrams to write them a letter of recommendation in order to get their job at Amazon. And that's because Jennifer Sulke is a well-known star effer. Like she just wants to hobnob with the big, powerful people. And so she was like, oh, I'll do JJ this favor and give these people who've never produced anything in their lives $1 billion with our most valuable property. And so the point I'm trying to make here in a very roundabout way is that there's no longer any qualifications necessary to create entertainment in Hollywood, whereas before, you know, people would be trained in like how to tell stories. They would bring on like actual like novelists to come in and write screenplays and stuff like that. People who had bothered to learn and master their craft, right? Nowadays, it's all about who you know. It's like if you're friends with like this guy who produced this one thing, like you can get hired on, you know, this other stuff. If you happen to be like a person of color who's a woman, I've heard stories about,
and maybe even a guy that's now a woman and a person of color. That's even better.
Yeah. I mean, like I've heard stories from people in writers' rooms who are like, you know, like people who've gotten hired to be part of the writers' room just because of their like race and gender, and like they've lied about their qualifications in order to get the job, and then they can't fire them once they're exposed for being a fraud because they'd be called racist or like whatever. So like it's a big issue in Hollywood, and DEI is just kind of like exacerbating it. And so like essentially you have a bunch of unqualified people who care more about clout and influence than they care about making actual good movies and TV shows for a specific audience, who are basically like they run Hollywood right now. And that's one of the reasons why we're getting such crappy stuff in terms of entertainment. And it's terrible. And it's not going to change anytime soon. In fact, it's going to get worse, which is why I'm looking forward to the AI indie revolution, where you have talented people who care about the craft, like being able to make movies that will eventually be able to compete with these $200 million like Hollywood films.
And the thing is, the studios have to keep their ESG scores up. We haven't heard that come back around a long time, but ESG is still a thing that like the cabal is looking to do. And that is your Vanguard, your State Street, your BlackRock, that, you know, gives a lot of money to these places to do the things that they want them to do. And you'll see it. And like you said, Matt, it's only going to get worse. And it kind of begs the question, like, do we want these things to come back? Do we want them to come and continue to do, or do we want them to just go bankrupt and go under, and we can get indie creators like that one guy that created that 11.5-minute video of Wolverine as a fucking Viking, and it looked better than anything it looked better than anything Marvel has put out in the last 7 years, if not plus. Like, it was great. The action was great, and it kind of goes to show, like, I only want stuntmen. I don't care if stuntmen don't know what they're doing. Let them just handle all action shit, because it looked fantastic. But it's like you said, the indie creator and the rise of it. And I think being able to crowdfund, right? Because they put out that 11-minute video. They had to spend a few $100,000, right, to do that, because it was high quality actors, all the screening, all that type of stuff. But now you can go and crowdsource for that, and you can get a lot of people that are like, that looks awesome. Yeah, you know, the IP wasn't original because it was Wolverine, but change the name up, do something a little different, and we'll give you money. And I think that's also where it's going to be, where we're not going to be forced to go to the movies to pay $300 for a family of four. We can choose to sit there and pay that $300, you know, to a creator that we know makes really good movies. And now they're crowdsourcing for this new film. They put out a trailer, and it's like, okay, our budget here is whatever. And there's going to be your crowdsourcing. And I think that's going to be the new wave of the future. Now, corruption is obvious, can go on there, right? You can have big people trying to put in big donations to get what they want. But I think it'll be what you're saying, more AI-centric, indie-centric, more, you know, what the people are asking for. And I know Angel Studios does a big thing this way with their guild members, and they kind of vote on what they're going to create and what they're going to do. And I could see that model also going well too. If you buy into the studio, you could then make decisions if you're there. And again, it can all be corrupted at some point, but these are much more pure ways that I see.
Well, I mean, in a sense, everything is crowdfunded because it has to do with like the free market, right? Like if people go and spend $1 billion in tickets to see like Top Gun Maverick, I mean, technically that's crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Right? No, you make a good point. And I think that the independent comic book community, Comicsgate or whatever it is you want to call it, what we're seeing happen there is very similar to kind of like what you're talking about, where comics fans are sick of the garbage that, you know, the major labels are putting out. And so they're willing to crowdfund individual creators in order to get something that is actually good. So,
yeah. And I want to say that quickly with the comic book indie thing, the infighting is fucking stupid, guys. That's all I had to say. I'm not going to say, I think it's dumb. I'm happy with competition. I think the infighting's dumb.
And I do want to bring up that, like, I think it's a good point that you're making with AI being one of the major things for movies specifically, honestly, because, when it comes to comic books and when it comes to games and when it comes to a lot of things, the barrier of entry is actually lower with those than it is for movies. Movies, especially making a good one that people want to see, is much more difficult and has much more probably to go into it. I would almost say certainly, unless someone shows me a lot of difference, but than a lot of other fields of entertainment. So AI would 100% make it a ton easier for someone or a group of people to be able to make something that people would want to watch and want to give money towards.
And we're seeing AI do that with music already, right? Suno makes it so easy to make a song right now. And for the most part, a fairly competent song, especially if you give it real direction. So I could see that also coming into the movie space.
But, I'm someone who's actually made movies. Like, I went to film school. I made movies there. I made a movie with Jeremy Renner that premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in 2004.
That's awesome.
And I can tell you that making a movie is one of the most miserable experiences you'll ever sit through. Because number one, it's expensive as hell. And I was making movies back when, like, you still had to use film, like HD, what was like, I would have killed for like my camera phone back then. So like we were shooting on like actual film, like having to like scout locations and get locations and like deal with insurance and liability and unions and day rates and equipment and equipment failure and bad weather and like
you can imagine all the contracts too and keeping everyone happy with their contract stipulations and all that type of stuff.
But then like when it comes to like Hollywood stuff, it gets even more complicated with like back end royalties and licensing agreements and stuff like that. So like it becomes like this nightmare scenario. And when you can eliminate that stuff, like like one of the things that we actually would spend the most money on as an independent filmmaker was craft services, because if you could like keep people happy with like the stuff that's around to eat, you solve a lot of problems. But you'd always have stuff where it's like the prop master comes to you in the middle of your shooting schedule and says, "I want more money or I'm walking." And at that point, you're like, well, I kind of need the prop master because we still got like 3 weeks left to shoot with. So they're basically blackmailing you. And then like there was a situation where we were shooting at a restaurant where we had basically negotiated with the owner to film there, and and in addition to the fee for filming there, we were going to get all of our cast and crew like their lunch there and stuff like that. And we had a situation where after we finished lunch and paid for it, they were like, "Okay, you have to get out now, or we're calling the police and kicking you off for trespassing."
What the hell?
Yeah. And basically like they got their big payday and they were like, "Screw you." Wow. And so like these are all like the things where I mean just look at any kind of like film documentary where like they go to shoot and all of a sudden like it's a freaking monsoon for like 12 days in a row. Like there's all this stuff that goes into making movies like just hell on earth. And the idea that there's something out there that can just create your sets for you virtually, that can like create actors for you virtually, so you don't have to deal with like the guys who won't come out of their trailer or like whatever. Like all this stuff is going to be like a reality for filmmakers very soon. And that type of stuff is going to make making movies so much more fun and easy and cheap to do. That you're just going to see like that Wolverine short film that you were talking about. You're going to see way more stuff like that, but in a 2-hour epic format, and it's all going to be a mixture of AI and, like real life stuff to begin with. But then eventually, like, I think it was James Cameron who said, we're 3 years away from a fully AI generated AAA movie. Right.
And it's still going to take talent, right? Because you're still going to have the vision. You're still going to have to direct the AI. You're still going to have to be able to describe it, because if you just leave AI to its own devices currently, it's going to create something probably subcompetent but passable sometimes, right? You're still going to have to give it a lot of direction, and that comes with talent of being able to see the type of things and articulate what you want to have as a vision and things like that.
The only thing AI is never going to be able to do that a human can do is understand storytelling and visualization. Like taking it back to Furiosa, one of the things that George Miller does is he storyboards every single shot of his movie. There's not a single frame on screen that he hasn't pre-visualized in some way.
Yeah.
And he sees the color palette in his mind. He sees exactly what he wants to have on the screen. He knows exactly what he has to shoot. And so by the time they get on set, like it's a well-oiled machine to basically put this, onto digital format and make it into a movie. And AI can't do that for you. But
if you give that man AI and let him put his vision into AI, what he would be able to create would be incredible.
Yeah, the issues that the Writers Guild had was that you had these unscrupulous producers who would use AI to write a script that was bad, right?
Yeah.
And then when you hire a writer to rewrite something, you pay them less than you would pay them to write something from scratch. And so they were basically using AI as a way to kind of like screw over writers from like actually having to like create stuff. And so like that was one of the issues. But I know this guy who's on like a lot of different live streams in the entertainment sphere. His name's Script Doctor. And he's very much anti-AI, and I have arguments with him all the time. And he's like, AI can never like write like a good story. I'm like, you're absolutely right. It can never write a good story, but that doesn't mean that AI can't give you the tools you need to take your story that you're passionate about and that you've worked on and bring it to life in ways that, right now people can't, unless you have like $20 million or $200 million or something like that.
And I feel like if you go scene by scene, right? If you tell it to write a full movie, it's going to be shit. But if you get descriptive with it and tell it what you want scene by scene, you'll still have to tweak it, but it'll be much more competent. I feel like in like small pieces, it would do the job much better. Now I'm curious.
But I mean, like how many bad movies are out there that just have shit scripts?
Most of them.
I mean, like if you think about it like that, it's like AI will write shit, but you have humans who write shit as well.
Yeah.
So like it's not like a very like binary choice here where it's like AI is bad, humans are good. Right?
No, they all kind of suck right now. Just this
exactly.
is AI's cheaper suck. So
well, in some cases, AI could write a better movie than a lot of humans could.
Yes, certainly. So I'm curious here because you laid out George Miller's vision for like this trilogy, this new Mad Max saga, really well. And I think that if that was out there, you would have a lot less people giving it as much shit as they're giving it, because it would kind of be like similar to Star Wars, right? The first one was okay with Rey, like people enjoyed bringing it back. Second one was not great, but let's see how they bring it in.
Terrible.
Right?
Second one was terrible. I'm just talking about.
Like, but there was the wait and see. There's a third movie. Let's see
really.
if they can bring it home. Yes,
not really.
Yes, there was. Dave, you're not
there
a Star
was
Wars
not.
fan. Yes,
there was not.
there was a lot of Star Wars fans hoping it could be ended properly.
That was cope. That was a lot of cope.
But you'll get that. But I feel like if there was more of that. And my question is, how far away are we from having guys like George Miller or people of the likes coming onto shows in the podcast sphere to talk about these types of things? Because they'll do interviews with Access Media at times, right? But I feel like if you had somebody or a surrogate of George Miller coming onto the Salty Nerd podcast, going on to G&G and things like that, and talking about this stuff, it would help boost their numbers immensely at the movie theater.
I don't know about that. Like, first of all, nobody in Hollywood of any meaningful position or status would ever really come on a podcast or a YouTube channel and be candid, right? Or honest. Because like the reason legacy media exists is for propaganda purposes. It's to sell the public on certain things like image and stuff like that. And so like you're never going to get like these guys coming out and saying that like they did stuff wrong, or like they're going to criticize Kathleen Kennedy to her face, or like any of this other stuff. So like like I don't think that's ever going to happen. like the closest thing we got to that was Terry Matalas, who was the head writer and showrunner of Star Trek Picard season 3.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did was, so you had 2 terrible seasons of Picard. You had a Star Trek fan base who had basically given up on the franchise because they'd just gotten years and years of pure crap.
Awful.
And so like he understood that like if his season 3 was going to succeed, he needed to reach out to the fans and bring them back on board. And so like he reached out to YouTubers who were like the voice of the main voice of criticism for the Star Trek franchise. And he basically said like, hey, we're trying to do things differently. We're trying to do things right. But even then, like he would never badmouth Paramount. He would never badmouth Alex Kurtzman. He'd never be honest about like the reality of what went into creating 2 terrible seasons of Picard before he got his hands on it. And so, you know, like that's the perfect case study to address what your question was, which was basically like, he still had to play the game, even though he was trying to mend fences. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it was ultimately a failure because even though Picard season 3 was well received by the fans, the Hollywood establishment said like, so what? We're still going to make terrible Alex Kurtzman Star Trek. We're not going to give the fans the spinoff that they all wanted from Picard season 3. And we're just going to continue to drive this beloved franchise into the ground.
You'll keep getting Discovery with dumb fucking songs and things like that.
Well, you get spinoffs of Discovery.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like it's this typical like idiotic Hollywood mentality where you have like lawyers and number crunchers who basically make the final decisions, and they don't know anything about what the audience wants, what they crave, who's talented, who's not. Like if you work in Hollywood for a day, you'll realize most of them don't read, and nobody knows what's good or not because like they don't trust their own guts.
Yeah. It's insane.
Wait, I do have one thing to ask that actually has to do with that, because you said they'll never be like raw on a podcast. They'll never be like really out there. And I feel like there's really a huge problem for audience wise for a lot of Hollywood and a lot of just very heavily produced things, is that I feel like the younger audience really gravitates towards just raw, personable stuff. I mean, look at Kai Cenat, look at iShowSpeed, look at these people who are crazy. They do over the top things, obviously, but they'd rather watch someone on a screen doing some nonsense than watch something that's really produced, and it could be produced well. But a ton of young people seem to want to pay attention to those things instead of just narrative-based things
or shitty jump cuts because people can't do things in one take anymore.
Yeah, but I don't know. I see. That seems to be an issue, at least from what I see. I would just think that would be an issue, and just how do you, not exactly how do you procure these people, but like, is their taste just a bit different where you have to try to find a way to make something that they'll actually enjoy more than an older audience would have probably gotten into something a little different than what they're into?
Well, tastes always change over time. You're not into the same stuff you are as an adult that you were when you were like 4, you know? So, but when it comes to like the creators that you specifically referenced, like the real issue here is an issue of personal branding. If you like a creator, you're going to watch that creator, and likability is basically what star power is built on. Like you're seeing this big backlash against Jennifer Lopez because she's highly unlikable. Nobody likes her, right? And so like they'll watch her, but they won't enjoy her. But then like you have someone like Sydney Sweeney, who you know, incredibly likable actress. Like she's not a good actress by any means, but she's pretty and she's likable. And so like you have like her star on the rise because of her likability factor. And it's the same thing like when you go to a bookstore and you see like Stephen King's name really big and then the title's really small in the book. And it's that personal branding, that brand awareness where people see Stephen King and they know what they're going to get from that book. And if they've read previous books of his and they're like, I liked those previous books, therefore his name signifies I'm going to like this. And when it comes to YouTubers and TikTokers and stuff like that, it's a personal brand situation. Like there's very little like fictional stuff that people like really like dive into on YouTube.
Yep.
It's all about the people who create that stuff. Like Mr. Beast, for instance. You don't watch Mr. Beast expecting like a Zack Snyder style movie, right?
No.
But you're basically watching him do a game show, and you watch it because you like Mr. Beast. He's a likable guy, and that's what the whole what makes YouTube special is it's about personalities. It's about people that you enjoy. Like you may not be interested in a topic of a video, but you'll watch it because you like the person who made the video.
Yeah, definitely.
Same thing with podcasts. It's like you tune into podcasts because you like the person who makes the podcast, right? Yeah. So, it's a big difference between something like, making a fictional movie versus making something based around a creator. And kids want that authenticity. Like younger people want that authenticity. And in fact, there's a study done where like the younger generation, the Zoomers, I guess is what you call them. They hate stuff that has to do with like LGBTQ and sex and all this stuff. They want stuff that's more based around friendship and romance. As opposed to like, being force fed like all these things about lesbian relationships and gay relationships and stuff like that. They're like, we don't want to see any of this stuff. We just want good stories about like friendship and normal stuff.
So shit from the 90s.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the 90s and make a lot of things from the 90s and 2000s and
I'd say
anime.
80s.
I mean, both of them. Yeah. Like they definitely 80s had a lot of it too. Yeah. So it's a sad state. So before you go, I want to just get your opinion. Rings of Power Season 2. We mentioned it a few times. I hate it. I haven't even been able to hate watch Season 1 because I've fallen asleep twice trying to watch it, Matt. I can't get past the first episode. Not only is it awful, it's fucking boring. It is just bad. It has a Season 2. Dave, you put on there Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, he's in it.
He doesn't exist. No, he's not. Because this isn't canon. This is stupid. Matt, are you a Lord of the Rings fan? If so, what is your opinion on Rings of Power and what they're doing to it?
I am a Lord of the Rings fan. I'm more of a fan of the movie than I am of the books. The books were always kind of a tough read for me. But the Peter Jackson films, epic. Love those movies.
They were great.
Like, I'm actually looking forward to Rings of Power because it's going to give us so much content to rip into.
Yeah, it's money.
Yeah, like people like yourself who might be like, I don't want to watch that show because it's bad. They'll tune into us talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're more entertaining than the show itself.
I will 100% be watching you guys be tortured without myself doing it and watching you guys G&G, Nerdrotic. Like, yeah, I will let you guys be mad about it.
So for like Season 1, we had like every Saturday we would have like a crew on that would break down each episode. And we'd make jokes about like Don Limanor, the Black Elf. We named the tree that got cut down Jeff. He became a character. And it was just like so much dumb shit in that first season. And there's going to be even more dumb shit in the second season that we're just going to love tearing into. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to it from the perspective of it's so bad we're going to make it good.
Yep.
Type thing.
What are they going to do with Tom Bombadil? Like, I'm curious. Like, the guy is essentially...
You have to watch to find out.
He's essentially as close to a god that you're going to get actually living on Middle Earth. He just tells things to not do it, and they just stop. Like, what can they possibly do with him? Like, they fucked up Galadriel enough by making her do anything at all besides just hang out and be awesome. Because that's kind of her whole life. And I mean, I can go on and on about how bad it is, but I digress. I just want to get your opinion there. I can rant for a whole other hour about how bad Rings of Power is. And listen, I sympathize with anybody that, reading it. Even Tolkien fans will tell you you're reading it at times and you're just like, get on with it. Like, you are reading it at times and all the detail. You're on the third page of like the cracked leaf and you're just like, please stop. Like, we understand.
the big irony here is that, George R.R. Martin wrote his Game of Thrones Song of Ice and Fire saga as a direct response to Tolkien, right? like he wanted something that was more gritty and realistic in the fantasy setting. He was like the anti-Tolkien, basically.
Yeah.
That was his goal when he set out to write Game of Thrones initially. And then you have House of the Dragon coming out the exact same time that Rings of Power are coming out as like a big FU to I'm Amazon.
Okay with that.
Yeah. And so it's going to be a fantasy summer. It's going to be like Rings of Power and House of the Dragon, and House of the Dragon is going to be awesome, and Rings of Power is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
So
I haven't watched, House of the Dragon. Yeah, I read the book about the Targaryens, kind of basically like bullet points about like the prequels. That was the book about them. It was very jumbled. Still a good read to learn about that. I'm still scared and scarred that even though this book has an ending, they're going to fuck up the final season whenever it happens. And I don't want to invest again, get into it, be really excited, love it, because apparently from what I've heard, it's fantastic. They've done a really good job streamlining it. George is involved, but George can't finish. I hope he's better at his love life, because when it comes to his fucking books, he is bad at finishing. And man, I'm scared. I don't know about you, Matt, but I'm scared.
Well, I mean, like I started reading George R.R. Martin back in like 96, something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe 97. But like I've been a longtime fan of the Game of Thrones series.
Were you reading the Hedge Knight stuff and things like that when he was like doing all that? Because they're making a Hedge Knight story now.
No, like I read some of the graphic novels, but like when it came to like the actual books, like I got into the series around the time that Storm of Swords first came out, which is the third book in the series. Yeah. And then I had to wait 5 years for Feast for Crows, which is the least good book of the series so far. And then I had to wait another 6 years for Dance of Dragons. And so now it's getting close to like 12, 13 years for Winds of Winter. And it's just like as a fan, like I've been long suffering way before like the people in the show. But I'm also a science fiction author. I've published novels in the past, and I've been tapped into the author community. And a lot of these people know George, and they would tell me stories about how like he would just have these huge fights with Benioff and Weiss, because Benioff and Weiss at a certain point started to believe that they were the reason the show was good as opposed to the source material. And so like they would be making these creative decisions that George wouldn't agree with. And he'd flat out tell them, it's like, guys, don't do this. And it all apparently accumulated in a meeting at George's house before season 8 started, where he actually kicked the two of them out because they had such a big fight over like how they planned to end the series. And even now, like I think it was just like within the last day or so, like George came out and like kind of like spilled the beans a little bit about like people who are adapting stuff and how like they insist on putting their own stamp on it. And it's kind of like a direct kind of like call out of Benioff and Weiss. Which I found very interesting, but it goes back to your opinion, like when are people ever going to be honest and candid? And it's like, even now he can't just come out and lambast these guys. He's got to do it like subtly and like, stuff like that. So, I mean, honestly, I hope that you decide to give House of the Dragon a shot, because the first season was really good. It kind of redeemed how bad season 8 was of Game of Thrones.
I'm still hurt. I'm still hurt seeing Arya dive through the air with that stupid dagger, and like, no, and she should have died 9 times before that. And there's so much wrong.
Well,
I'm mad at them.
There was this whole thing, and I kind of blame J.J. Abrams for it because I feel like he kind of started it. But there's this whole mentality in Hollywood that you have to outsmart the audience. Like you have to like do stuff that they're not expecting or surprise them in a way, as opposed to actually giving them what they want, right? Like the entire audience wanted Jon and the Night King to have like the final battle. Like they wanted that confrontation, and instead they subvert expectations by letting Arya do this thing. And it was just like dude, it's okay if the audience guesses what's going to happen.
Just do it well.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, I'm not gonna lie, that's why I enjoy a lot of Eastern stuff right now, like manga and anime, because they like tropes. And a lot of the criticisms is, well, it's a lot of the same tropes. Yeah, but they're unique to that property, and they do it well. Not all of them do it well. Some of them screw it up at the end, and like anything else, it's tough to finish a story. It's always tough to start a story, tough to finish a story. You're an author, you know that. One of the hardest things to do is to start that story and then to actually finish it and be happy with it, right? You know, you being an author and writing, those are the two toughest things to do. And even when you're done, you're probably still not happy with a lot of the things you've done. You probably still go back and look at it and go, could have done this, could have done that. This didn't sound great, blah, blah, blah. But it's like they are content with tropes. And, you know, in the West, we used to be content with tropes as well. We used to be fine with tropes, and it was just do the trope well. And right now, like you said, we're going to start with the trope, but then we're going to M. Night Shyamalan every fucking thing we have and just try to do that twist that you didn't expect. And it's like, no, the chick is going to kill something, and she's going to be the key to it all, and she's probably going to be black. Like, we know what it's going to be at this point. Stop doing it. But I digress. Matt, anything else that you want to jump in there and say about Hollywood before we jump out of here? Because this has been lots of fun and honestly extremely educational about a lot of the stuff that goes on there.
Just that, you know, I hope Hollywood gets its act together and starts giving us the stuff that we want as opposed to political nonsense. I don't think it's going to happen, though. So
part of me doesn't want them to, because fuck them, because I don't like them. David, before we jump, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say there are still good people who work there and talented people as well. But, you know, it's kind of interesting because, like, you could have the most talent in the world, but if you don't have any money attached to you, you're never going to get anything made in Hollywood. And the opposite's true, where you could have zero talent, but if you have a couple bucks to spend, or you have somebody backing you and financing you, then you can get whatever it is you want made. And also, Hollywood kind of naturally attracts like narcissists and sociopaths.
Yes.
And so, like, you have a ton of those people in big positions of power in that industry, and it can chew people up and spit them out and leave them on the side of the road next, you know, with barely any life left in them. And it can be such a draining place to try to make any headway in, especially if you don't align with them politically. And so, like, there needs to be some type of alternative. And I think AI right now is the best avenue for that. As soon as the tools catch up to the point where, like, you know, they can kind of like almost predict what people are trying to tell them that they want, it's going to be a game changer. And you're going to see the Hollywood system basically implode when that happens, because you're going to finally give the tools to the talented people to tell the stories they want to tell. And Hollywood's not going to be able to compete.
I like that. Dave, anything before we jump out of here?
Well, I think things naturally have a life cycle. Everything has a life cycle. So if Hollywood has to die for entertainment to be good again, and if things have to just go naturally that way, then however it happens, it happens. I mean, you can try to fluff things up as much as you want, but eventually that cycle happens. So we'll see what goes down.
And, you know, and I just want to say the good and talented people of Hollywood, come out of the shadows. Number one, you don't have to be a conservative, right? Because not all of them. So there's a lot of good people on the left that are extremely gifted artists and talented. Just come out of the shadows. You have an army behind you if you're going to make good shit. There are a lot of people, and I think the rise of, you know, shows like yours, The Salty Nerd and G&G, all the people on YouTube that are like these alternative people, the indie comic scene, Steam and the creators that they do great things over there with the gaming space. There is an army of people hungry that will back you if you are talented, if you're brave, and if you don't back down. I think that there's more of us than there are of them. Yes, there are a lot of people that have money and power, but they will go with where they think they're going to make money. And if they think that there's going to be a shift, then these people, all they give a fuck about is money. They will go towards the money. So that's my piece. Be brave. There is a bunch of people behind you that will back you if you do good work. So that is just my piece. So once again, Matt, thanks for jumping on. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
So he's Matt Kadish. He's the producer of the Salty Nerd podcast and owner of the Las Vegas Podcaster Studio. You can find the show Saturdays and Tuesdays is when it's on. What time?
Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which I think is like 1 p.m.
Here,
Eastern.
East, yeah.
And then on Tuesdays, we're at 1 p.m. Pacific time, which is 4 p.m. Eastern. Yeah.
That's easy because that's the NFL. 1 and 4. That's the NFL. That's an easy one for me to do there.
Yeah. So those are when we live stream. So if you want to catch us live, do that, or catch us on the replay at saltynerdvideo.com.
Awesome. And you can go follow Matt on X at Matthew Kadish. I'll put it up there on screen right there so people can see it. And then just go search for Salty Nerd. I actually love your logo. I think your logo is dope. How'd you guys get that created? That thing looked cool. Whose idea was that?
Our host Alex had that designed. So
and tell Alex he's got a great name. I really like him. I think he's the best part of Salty Nerd. No bias at all. Anyway, but Matt, once again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everyone that watched on YouTube, that watched on X. We appreciate it all. If you're watching on YouTube, once again, share the show with your friends. Smash that like buttons. Give us a subscription. If you're watching on X, give us a repost, retweet, whatever the hell you want to call it, and go and give us a follow. Spread the word as well. And we will be back next week with another fun show. We appreciate everyone that took the time to watch this. Everyone,